Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Metarealism. When I recently discussed the issue of this podcast vis-a-vis my religion and explained that I did not feel comfortable discussing my religion in this podcast, I felt as though I really did not clarify that well enough, so I will try to do that now. If I ever discuss my religion, it will be in a separate podcast, entirely separate from this one. I will not connect them in any way whatsoever. Now, here's the problem. I am a scholar. I know Arabic and Persian enough to be dangerous. And so I could easily talk about my religion without any problems whatsoever. Be no reason for me not to talk about my religion, especially considering the fact that I know Arabic and Persian, which might be a clue for some of you as to what that religion is. But again, my religion is not a secret. It's something that anybody can find out what it is simply by Googling my name, Mark A. Foster. You'll find it. As I said last time, the reason why I have decided not to discuss my religion in this podcast is not because of me, but it's because of my love and respect for my religion. And I feel as though if I were to discuss my religion, that it might cause harm to my religion. I don't mean that in any kind of devastating way. What I mean is that my religion is not a political religion. Plus, most members of my religion that I know, and I have been a member of my religion since I was 14 years old, and I am now almost 68, so you can do the math. For the vast majority of my life, I have been a member of my religion, and I say with all due humility that I know quite a bit about it. But what I think about is, what would I talk about? I really don't know. There are already a lot of podcasts devoted to my religion, and many of them, maybe not all, but many of them are quite good. Do I listen to them frequently? No. Maybe I should, but I do listen to them occasionally, and I find them to be somewhat impressive. I don't always agree with what the presenter is saying, so be it. That's fine. My religion is not rigid or fundamentalist, and disagreement is tolerated, even encouraged, as long as people make it absolutely clear that what they are saying is their own understanding, which makes sense, because obviously I do not have the authority to speak for my religion, just as I do not have the authority to speak for Marxism, third worldism. I should say Maoism, third worldism, Bhaskarian critical realism, intersectional Marxism, kyriarchy, and Antifa, which are the basic ingredients of dialectical meta-realism, which is really the subject of this podcast. Primarily, Maoism, Third Worldism, and the critical realism of Roy Bhaskar. Now, there is a certain amount of overlap, in my mind, between critical realism and my religion. That is one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons I was attracted to it, to be honest, at only 14 years old. And it's kind of odd because I literally knew next to nothing about my religion when I joined it. And I'm not exaggerating. I found a book in Macy's department store in New York, and I read the back cover. That was it. I didn't read the book itself until a long time later. I looked at my religion in the phone book, spoke with a woman who soon became my best friend, although she was old enough to be my grandmother at least, and we soon became the closest of friends. She died many years ago, but I love her till this day. I have a tremendous affection for her. And whenever I think about doing something, to be honest, the first thing I think of is, would Elizabeth approve of it? I'm not saying that because I need her approval. I don't. I don't need anyone's approval. For the most part, I can do whatever I want. For the most part, there are limitations. For example, if I started misrepresenting my religion, that would not be too cool. But I would never do that. I would express my views according to my own understanding, and I would always make it clear that that is what I'm doing, that all I am doing is speaking according to my own personal view, because that's all any of us can do. We are limited human beings, and one of our limitations is the fact that we are not inerrant. We are not infallible. And so there is no way that I could speak about my religion, about Marxism, about communism, about sociology, or about anything else in an authoritative way. If I tried to, I would simply be deluding myself because I have no authority. I'm just me. I'm just an ordinary person. And when I say that, I mean that with all sincerity. I am nobody special. I was fortunate that despite being an autistic, despite my child psychiatrist predicting that I would spend my life on public assistance, that instead I got a Ph.D. in sociology and became a multimillionaire, which was the last thing that my child psychiatrist would have ever expected for me. He had very low expectations for me and for my life. Sometimes I'm not sure whether to take that as an insult or simply as a result of his professional experience, namely that most people he had treated with the diagnosis he gave me, which is now incorrect, and the name is not even used anymore, schizophrenia childhood type, which is now called autism spectrum disorder. And in the interim, it went through a variety of other names. But despite his prognosis, I managed to come out of the tunnel doing well. I have nothing to complain about. But going back to the subject of my religion, as I said before, I love my religion. I converted to it when I was 14 years old. That was after an extensive search, which brought me into an exploration of a variety of different religions, including my own religion of soulology, Ekankar, a faux religion, meaning a phony religion, started by Paul Twitchell, Sikhism, and Wicca, and many more. And so, as I went through this journey, I discovered what I was looking for. And so when I saw that book in Macy's, of all places, in the stationery department, all I did was to read the back cover. I did not read the book for a long time. And somehow I was convinced by the back cover that it was true. That was purely an intuitive experience. As I said before, I will no longer compartmentalize the different aspects of my life, Marxist and mystical. I think that was a poor decision on my part. Although honestly, I did that in sincerity. Why? Because I thought that, well, anybody listening who was a Marxist or a communist is most likely not going to care about my mystical life. And anybody who cares about my mystical life is not going to care about me as a Marxist and a communist. But then, when I began thinking more deeply, especially about the critical realism of Roy Bhaskar, I realized that Roy Bhaskar himself was a profound mystic. I am really sad that he is deceased. I wish he were still around. I really wish he was still around. I would love to have a conversation with him at this very moment. But that is not possible. And so my belief is that I will see him when I depart from this world. And in the next world, I will be able to consort with him and discuss my life, my experiences with him, the good things and the bad. So I don't want to discuss my religion, not because I'm ashamed of it. Quite the opposite. As I said, I love it. But if I were to discuss it, and certainly I could, I mean, there's nobody that's stopping me from doing it. There's nobody with a gun pointed at my head saying, don't discuss your religion. I can do what I want. but I feel as though it would not only be inappropriate, but profoundly disrespectful to my religion, really disrespectful to my religion. Here's the reason why. Most members of my religion, to the best of my knowledge, are not Marxists or communists. I would even go so far as to say that the majority of members of my religion whom I have met are opposed to Marxism and communism. Now, do I think they are right? Well, obviously not, because I am a Marxist and a communist, a Maoist third worldist, and a Bhaskarian critical realist. So clearly, I don't agree with them. I would even say that most members of my religion have a rather favorable view of capitalism. I must say that makes me sad, but that's their business. I have no right to interfere in their beliefs, just as they have no right to interfere with mine. Although some of them have tried, they have. Some people have really gotten, I wouldn't say scolding, but pretty close to scolding. Offended is probably a good word. Offended. Because again, I'm open about what I am. I don't try to hide it. It's not a secret. I will sometimes go to meetings of my religion with an Antifa cap or with various types of Marxist and communist t-shirts, including one that says Maoism, third worldism. I even have a cap that says that. So I am not afraid of discussing my beliefs with other members of my religion at all. In fact, I would enjoy it. But I don't do it that much because the reactions I have gotten to it have been really, really negative. And I am not exaggerating. When I say really, really negative, I mean really, really negative. This one person whom I know, whose name I will obviously not disclose, she is a member of my religion, and she is really, really angry that I am a Maoist third worldist. She plays these kinds of mind games with me. And I don't know if she realizes that I am aware that she is playing mind games. Like, for example, she'll make a statement like, I had been reading the writings of Adam Smith, and I realized that I am a capitalist. Why is she saying that to me? Obviously, because she's trying to get my goat. She is not happy about the fact that I am a Maoist third worldist. The critical realist part, I don't think bothers her that much. But my guess is that is because she really does not know much about critical realism. If she knew more about it, would she be opposed to it? Maybe, but I don't know. But I do know that per my conversations with her, she does not like the fact that I am a member of my religion. And she always tries to get my goat. Give you a second example. A little over a year ago, there was this one person, sadly, a member of my religion. But this guy has all sorts of problems, physical as well as psychiatric. He came up to me after I told him that I publish my books online. And he got really, really angry at me for doing that, even though that is perfectly permissible. I can publish my books online. There's no prohibition against it. I have written tons of books, and most of them are online. One is published by a formal publisher, but the vast majority of them, and I think I have like 37 of them, that includes the one I'm working on now, are published online. Some deal with Maoism, third worldism, and critical realism, and some deal with my religion. He was more concerned about the ones that deal with my religion. He started screaming at me. Screaming at me. I was in shock because I had never met this guy before, or his wife. I don't know whether his wife heard the conversation, but I assume that she must have. I mean, she was in the next room and he was yelling. I can't conceive of how she could not have heard him yelling at me. She chose not to enter the room, which in itself annoyed me. I mean, it's her husband. And she showed right then and there that she was not willing to take responsibility for him. When I was a guest in their home, she had personally invited me to her home. What has been the result of that? Neither one of them are anywhere to be found. At least not by me. I stayed away from meetings for a while to get myself acclimated, to adjust to what had happened. But I was told, well, they're not showing up. And they're not. I can only surmise that the reason relates to what happened to me. My guess, and I can't prove it, is that he initially denied what he had done, but then he told her. Later on, I was at a meeting of my religion in a public library right next door in McAllen. It's a really big library. It is the largest one-floor library in the world. Why? Because it used to be a Walmart. They bought the Walmart and turned it into a library, complete with restaurants, a bookstore, a gift shop. I mean, it's a huge library. So, without mentioning the name of the meeting, which could give away what the religion is. I went to the meeting. Why? Because I was a part of that task force that was running that activity. I was appointed to it. In the course of that meeting, this same guy called me outside into the lobby. I hesitated before going out, but I remembered that shortly before that time, when we had discussed this issue of him attacking me for publishing books online, he said to me, "Oh, no, I don't feel that way anymore." Notably, he never apologized to me. But still, because of that, I felt comfortable going outside, accepting his invitation. That was my mistake. He took me to a part of the library. Remember, this is a huge place, out of sight of the people in the meeting room. And he said to me that if you ever curse out my wife again, I will strangle you. Problem: I never cursed out his wife. All I can think of is that this man was delusional. I still think so. Whether it's related to his physical problems, maybe psychological problems, I don't know. I'm not a therapist. But it was certainly very disconcerting. So what did I do? I did not go back into the room. I went to the reference desk at the library and I asked if the security guard could come in to speak with him. The reference librarian I spoke with said that is against our policy because he is not really prepared to deal with any kind of violent confrontations, which made sense. So he said, what we recommend always is that people call 911, which I did. Within about 10 minutes, a police officer showed up in the library. I told him what had happened. Then he was going to have a conversation with the person who had threatened to strangle me. Till this day, I don't know whether that conversation ever took place. I don't know. But regardless, my assumption, and I should not have made this assumption, was that the police officer would press charges against this guy. That did not happen. And so began an odyssey where I had to deal with multiple individuals. It took months and months. The ultimate resolution, which till this day makes no sense to me, is that I would apologize to him and he would apologize to me. I followed their instructions, but till this day, I don't know what I was apologizing for. I did not do anything wrong. As an autistic, I have commonly been bullied. So it was not out of step with that. It was in keeping with my life experience. This guy was bullying me. I don't know why. I have not seen him or his wife since that time in the library. I have not seen them at all. I wish that one of them, preferably his wife, I guess because I'm afraid of her husband approaching me, to be honest, and what I might have to do to defend myself. I don't know how I can. I am not a strong man, but obviously I would have to do something. I don't know why she has not approached me, or for that matter, why he has not approached me. Instead, they have decided to simply stay away. Now, the reasons for that. In the interim, between him attacking me for publishing books online, and I told him what kinds of books I publish, the kinds of things that we've been talking about in this podcast, and the time when he threatened me with strangulation in the library, I would assume he found out more about me. Can't prove it, but that's my assumption. So I have to say that that is the worst experience I ever had as a result of being a communist, a Marxist, and simultaneously a member of my religion. Most members of my religion, I think, although I can't say that for sure because I don't know all members of my religion, but I think most members are, at least to some extent, capitalists. Certainly that woman I mentioned that I chatted with on the phone, who talked about how much she liked capitalism, and in particular the writings of Adam Smith in Wealth of Nations. And she knew who she was talking to. That was clearly an intentional act on her part. So, if you're wondering why I do not want to mention my religion, that is it. I have seen too many bad things happen. But I guess the ones I mentioned are the worst, although there have been others. People getting really, really angry at me for being a Marxist and a communist, which I have a right to be. That's my prerogative. I mean, if they have a right to be a capitalist, then why shouldn't I have a right to be a communist? That's a question that does not require an answer. Obviously, I do. Now, the fact that some people don't like it, too bad. But I don't want to cause any trouble, including for my religion. For word to get out that there is an active member of your religion who was a Maoist third worldist and a critical realist, a Marxist, a socialist, and a communist. That could harm my religion. Now, it might not. It might not. But even if it didn't, and that's possible, it might not. It's possible that nothing would come of it. I would be looked at in a less than favorable way. So I said that I was not primarily concerned about me, but certainly I am concerned about me to an extent. I mean, I don't want to be seen as the black sheep in the family. Obviously not. And so, to clarify what I said the other day about not wanting to discuss my religion in this podcast, that was it. That's the clarification. And although I could start, as I said before, a separate podcast on a separate channel, and I already have 2 YouTube channels, so I could use that. I really don't see the point, because the major thing that I would want to talk about is something that I have discussed already, and that is the maiden. So basically, what I'd be doing is conducting an exercise of repetition, meaning repetitions of things that other members of my religion are saying in their own podcasts. And I honestly don't see a reason to do that. Might I change my mind at some point? Yeah, I might. But for now, I don't see that happening. For now, I am content to have a podcast where I talk about Maoism, third worldism, Asgardian critical realism, intersectional Marxism, kyriarchy, and Antifa. That, for me, right now is sufficient. I don't need anything else right now. If I change my mind, I will do it. I'll do it. I mean, I have no objection to doing it. My objection is to combining the two things. But I literally have no idea what I would say that would be original. And I always like what I say to be original. I was like that when I was a professor before I retired. I always wanted my thinking to be innovative, to be out of the norm. And I'm still like that. That is still the way I think. I try to think out of the box. I've always been that way. And I assume I will be that way for the rest of my life. For the time being, this is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D. for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. Have a pleasant day and an even better day tomorrow.